Hi kids, it's me, Suze, your friend from the third cosmic ray, coming to you today with part 2 of our Healing Through Dreamscapes conversation. So in part 1, I covered my nightmares as a child. Now in part 2, what we're going to do is incorporate that with something I believe to be true. So, I hope you enjoy this. Now, if we consider how hard it is to forgive in this lifetime, can you imagine how that concept would continually evolve in your spiritual journey through time and space? And if we retain even one memory from any given lifetime, could you possibly imagine that this very shadow has the responsibility, well, it's responsible, I should say, for co-creating our reality that we deal with in this world that we believe to be true? Okay, so I'm going to share with you what I came to believe to be true about my past lives. And this was a reading I had when I was 27 years old. So we're going to back up a minute. I went running like a scared child at 22 years old when Mama Lil told me that I was to be her legacy. So I had a baby, I went to be normal, I ran a business, and you know, of course, I couldn't stay away from it, especially my love for astrology or the mystery school knowledge. I couldn't stay away from it. I tried the best I could, but at 27, a couple of my dear friends, one of them being Gina on Facebook, we went to a psychic fair. These days they call them Holistic Living Expos. And so we all went off to do our own thing. And I wound up at a table where the woman was reading past lives. And she was very much a Christian, you could tell, you know, that kind of a love and light and God and the whole beautiful creation kind of gal. Wonderful woman. But when I first sat down, and this is a true story, of course, all my stories are true, she looked at me and she said, "I'm not going to tell you when you're going to die." And I thought, dag, man, that's the last thing I want to know. But let's remember from the first video, and of course, I hadn't rescued my inner child at 27. I was terrified with the fear of death and that someone was coming to get me. My number had been called, my time was up. I was way too problematic for the governing group, so they were just going to give me a little shot and put me out of my misery. So I sat down and of course heard this incredible tale, and some of it of course went into my immediate computer of memory banks because it stirred a place in my heart that must have been so deep that I could remember it all these years. Now, I think the things that we have a hard time remembering may be because those were some of the most traumatic of the events. So when I'm covering a particular one, I will try to connect it, if possible, to my understanding as a 27-year-old woman. And then I will also connect it back out to what I learned between, let's say, the ages of 38 and 42 before I came into my full-blown journey. And of course, we all have these initiation points like we discussed about. So that's the great thing about life charting. If you work this exercise, of course, you have a clear, concise record and testimony of what you were actually experiencing. And I'm sorry, guys, nobody can tell you that you were wrong or that your ideas are not valid, because you are creators and your ideas are valuable in the kingdom of Almighty God. So, let me pick up this paper. And I created an order for these. I remember 5. And of course, I want to tell you that there were a few more that I don't remember. And wise ones would suggest that we have had easily over 100 of these experiences. And of course, some of us more. I'm an old soul, so I know I've seen big numbers. So the first one we're going to cover is a gypsy. And when I was little and it was time to dress up for Halloween, I loved being a gypsy. I thought it was the coolest thing. I loved Cher, Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves. I loved her message. I resonated with this free spirit lifestyle. And so if we think about gypsies getting bad raps all the time, and we think about different times in history, you could see where I might have experienced this kind of a journey of continual hiding and continual targeting. And of course, in my life, and I'm never crying about it, I'm just bearing witness to you guys because it's an incredible journey to heal through. And I appreciate so much of my my new friends for actually being intelligent and open-hearted and allowing me the space to do this. So I'm always grateful for that. Now, there was one that was pretty funny, and I think it was relevant to me because I was a young mother. So the second one was a Southern belle in the Old South, and doesn't that crack you up? So I'm this nice woman that's being taken care of by a very benevolent husband, you know. And so I have these children, and I have 9 sons. And during the birth of the last son, of course, I perish in childbirth. And my first delivery of a child was so terrifying in this life because I had toxemia, which is high blood pressure during pregnancy, and I didn't believe I had it. My daughter's, she was unable to be born because there was a cord wrapped around her neck, and so she wouldn't drop down through the birth canal. I wound up having an emergency C-section, but I had been prepped, even with hypnosis, for a natural childbirth and to actually labor in the water. And in 1987, I was going to be one of the first girls in St. Louis to actually be in the birthing tank at Christian Hospital Northwest. And at the last minute, the rug was pulled out from under me, and I was forced to have that needle in my spine, guys, and it broke my spirit. I went on to have other children via natural methods, and that will be a whole other conversation on birth control. I can't wait to share that one with you. But back to the story, okay? In this lifetime, I have A negative blood, and for any of you that know, if you have a positive blood father and a negative blood mother, the mother's body treats the child as a foreign invader, and if those bloods mix for any reason, my body would attack my own child. So can you imagine before they had the Rogam shot, which you get at 20 weeks, and then after you deliver, if you give birth to a positive blood baby, before they had this, the first child would be born fine. Subsequent children had increasing chances of physical defects and actually organ problems on the inside and even stillbirths. So I think that for every woman, whether she's ever had a child in this lifetime or not, if we remember a time where we actually suffered that kind of loss, or even in this lifetime, current time, someone we love suffers that loss. Every man and woman has the potential to feel that loss, of course. Another reason why we're all so traumatized on this planet, huh? Okay. Next one, and of course I spoke about this from the child's version. She confirms spirit, of course, on the story of the catacombs. So, because I lived in a fear-based life, and because maybe I didn't have the tools to stand up for myself, especially as a younger person, maybe it's possible that I felt like a heel. I felt like a puss. I felt scared. And that side of me that doesn't feel like I could be worthy or good enough told me that since I was a chicken, that I was hiding out instead of being right there by my Lord, by Christ. I should have been there, is what my mind told me. But now as I got older, I started understanding and saying, well, hey, what if you were one of the ones that carried the secret knowledge? And part of my job assignment was to hide, and to hide that knowledge, and to have a more reclusive lifestyle in order to try to stay safe. And of course, this is going to play big into my current life, but we're not discussing that now. We are really just traveling up to the age of 42, which is an angel year in life charting. The next one, there is a lifetime in the Highlands of Scotland. And of course, oh my goodness, who didn't love the Highlander? We used to watch that all the time, but I did always feel connected to it, seriously. And as you know, a lot of the redhead population, which is a whole other subject, comes from that particular area. So it would be easy to see, especially if you look at my maiden name, Glasscock. We've got Ireland, we've got Scotland, we've got England. My dad was too cheap to find out about our family crest, He was really more just into his American heritage, and he was a good old boy from the South in his mind, so short-minded. Dear man, though. All right, so the Scotland lifetime, I can imagine, the Druid thing coming, and Stonehenge, and a lot of the key lines and energy vortexes and things, of course, that we are blessed to learn about with our free education here. And, it's funny, like when I was young and people talked about psychic parties, of course, these ding-dongs would go, and there'd be like 27 Cleopatras, and then, the one little servant girl or whatever, she wanted to be Cleopatra too. And because of my own short-sightedness, I was always sure that I was never, one of those Cleopatra types, we'll just say. And there's a reason that I needed to not know that, so I'm cool with that one. Last but not least, I think what we're going to talk about is the hermit type of a lifestyle, and someone is at my door. So I'm going to have to open the door. I do apologize for this. We're going to keep the film rolling because you know me, I like to keep it real. Let me just get the door, guys. I'm doing a YouTube. You can come in. You can come in. Just go through. Okay, so of course, now we have to have all the noise and all the action But you know, I don't edit these videos, and I like the interaction of friends and family. So the dog needs to go, and you can go in the other room, Sam. The last lifetime is one of a hermit, and of course, these would have been the times hiding out in the woods, not being with the locals in the town. People wondering who was that gal out there, and of course, positive messages might get to 3 people, where negative messages in our other reality, which is not current in my book, you know, they'll tell 10 people if they hear something bad. So I'm sure when I was a hermit out in the woods that people came to me for healing. I'm sure that I brought alleviation of suffering, which of course carries over into this lifetime. And, you know, especially during those dark times, people were honestly, literally terrified of their own shadows. And I think that I probably met an interesting fate keeping that in mind. So these nightmares that I had along the way, an interesting theme that ran through them is that I was never actually caught. In the first one, I talk about the chutes and ladders scenario where you hide over here and you know, slip through by the seat of your pants, and this can, of course, go on for hours. So when I got to be 38 years old, I was sick of the nightmares, literally. And I had 3 children. My youngest was a baby, and I was fed up. So I called a woman who called herself a personal growth consultant, but of course, she was a psychic. She was just very clinical with her awards and documents. She wasn't a crystal freak or, you know, having anything that would make her not fit into normal society standards. And she's very, very good. I would highly recommend her if someone called me to this day. Her name is Jean Walters Lucy, bless her heart. So when I called her, you know, I really tried to explain to her that I knew all about this stuff, and I had run with a psychic, and, you know, these nightmares and this and that and the other. And she stopped me dead in my tracks. And she said, hey, she says, I want to tell you something. She says, the opposite of fear is love. And I thought, you know, screw you. I mean, that kind of offended me because I love so many people, and so many people love me. And I took it in, though. You know, I can take criticism. I have my whole life. And then she said, I'm not talking about you loving other people and other people loving you and thinking you're great. I'm talking about you loving you. So, confirmation of spirit, this is the journey that we're on to actually heal our inner child and be able to say, you know what, Ho'oponopono, I'm sorry you were hurting this bad. I didn't know. Please forgive me. So, that kind of opened things up. And she had a story for me about my past life. And here it is. I was in Boston. I had a daughter, and I had a husband. And the husband died of a blood disorder. And as a healer, I did my best to keep him with us, but it didn't work out like that. He expired. And so my daughter and I traveled with a group, and say that would have brought us down into the Kansas area, Midwest. And during that convoy, I saw the people I traveled with rounded up, tortured, and killed. But my daughter and I survived and we made it. So this to me ties in also with this reoccurring theme that I have had to feel and experience everyone's pain. And as an empath, I can accept that, and I worked with that for years. The beautiful thing is now, of course, if you follow the astrology, which I do, Pisces have been freed of being the one that everybody comes to get help, even though they really don't want help. And I have definitely seen that happen in my life. Friends have changed, locations have changed, and it is all in beautiful divine synchronicity. So it's a beautiful thing. You know, this is one that is very troubling and embarrassing to me. And this goes down to the bottom of my heart brain. Now we're going to go back to my growing up as a child. And my mother was an atheist. She couldn't love herself, so obviously she couldn't love others, she couldn't love me. And in her mind, she believed her father wanted a son. But I have the evidence in my grandfather's war letters, and you're welcome to watch the War No More series where you will hear that witness account. But my grandfather just hoped that she would be healthy mentally and physically, which she wasn't. So not having a normal childhood, you know, and of course so many people that look normal aren't normal, and we all know that now. But I didn't have a church until I chose to have one at the age of 12, and I chose to be baptized, and I remember the whole event. But in those early years in playground group, when we were going to the swimming pool or going on field trips and we'd all be in the buses, you know, they would sing those silly kids songs. And there was one that said, "Oh, you can't get to heaven." And then they would inject each type of person into that line and say, for example, "Well, you can't get to heaven with red hair because the Lord don't want no fire up there." And so when people told me that I was godless, or prime example, my best friend from childhood actually believed that if her family hadn't gotten me to church, that God would have never got to know me. And, you know, here she sits now very ill, and it's tremendously sad, but, you know, I had to break it down to her and tell her that God came for me when I was 3. I mean, I loved her mom like a mom. And so many people are dry with their spiritual beliefs, or even you could say lukewarm. I chose not to ever have a dry, lukewarm experience, as you can tell. So these things that I'm sharing with you, I asked for. And I know that's hard for us to perceive when we are in this limited state. But really, we're not in a limited state anymore. So perception becomes quite open-eyed at this point. Is there anything else? Let me see. Oh, should I tell you now, or should I save it for later? I think everybody wants me to tell it now. I want to tell it now. Okay, guys. I'm the nut that knows Jesus is my brother, and that this ultimate creator God is my true mother and father. So, when I come to the third cosmic ray, my community of choice, of course there's going to be dark forces, and these key dark forces don't want me here, and none of this is personal because, of course, we're all actors on a stage, right? So, one of the head three honchos, okay, first he's my friend, we're hanging out together, you know, smoking cigarettes, talking, and the one day we're hanging out, and he says, hey, he says, what's up with what you do? And I said, what do you mean what I do? I'm a holistic stylist. I said, you mean like castor oil packs or Bach essence or crystal healing or homeopathy? And he says, no. He says, you're a witch, aren't you? And I said, no, dude, you know, and I told him what I just told you guys. And he says, no, it's cool. I used to date a witch. And I'm like, I don't give a shit what you did. I said, do you know what alchemy is? And he said, no. And I said, now how is it that you can know so much about the dark arts? Or let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. White light, Wiccan, sacred earth. I mean, he didn't talk like that, but I can have respect for anyone, what they choose to believe, because it is their reality. And so I said, do you know of alchemy, the sacred science? He says, no. What's that? And I said, well, that's where you transmute water to purify it, or that you would heal or bring alleviation of suffering or manifest miracles. And he didn't have a clue, man. Now, you know what he did connect to? Because this is what I had to finally hit him with. You know, the fairy tales of, say, Rumpelstiltskin making gold on his spinning wheel. Alchemists go down in the history books for people that could transmute base metals into gold. And like we know now with our Facebook adventure, well, for those of you who study it, if you buy into the body of evidence that would suggest that there are aliens who use gold for their power source. And I mean, let's be honest. What did the world run on here forever? Gold. So, whatever. Alchemists could also pop in and out of a dimension. They could walk through walls, you know. We're not talking about magicians. There's all sorts of different levels of blessings that we receive, I believe, through our good karma. So, in another existence, let's say that I used my base of healing knowledge for good and to help people, that surely I would be blessed with it in this lifetime to continue it. Let's say, I've always believed this one, so let me share this. I love essential oils, don't get me wrong. But if you do not know what you're doing, and say you use a certain oil with the wrong application, you can get into trouble. You can also get into trouble with herbs. So, maybe in a lifetime, whenever, however, that I misused the knowledge. Or let's say I didn't even mean to misuse it. Let's just say I was stupido. I didn't know. I was uneducated. And I participated in it. Well, of course, that would leave this residual that I don't want nothing to do with it. And I think that that's why so many people are afraid of the unknown, because I'm telling you, right here at the back of your head, all these memories are piling in on you. And at this time in the world, what they say is that with quantum physics and multidimensional reality and quantum jumping, you gotta love Bert Goldman, that we can actually contact any one of these given different personas, which would be part of us, just like we are a spark in the Godhead. So we can acquire this knowledge. They say we're ourselves coming from the future to now to heal this rift, and this is the one opportunity in time and space for it. So it's really nice to work towards sharing these things. And in my part 3 that'll be coming up shortly, I hope, we're going to talk about a few more things that actually were dreams when I was a child that manifested in the adult years. So I'm going to leave you hanging with that and say namaste. Thanks for spending very valuable time with me. And remember, let me step back a little bit. I am Suze Pratt on YouTube. I'm your holistic stylist, and I'm in great appreciation. Take care.